Chainsaw Man, the movie, Reze Arc, for me is the peak of Chainsaw Man as a story. I think what makes Chainsaw Man so popular is that it has some of everything for everyone, and this movie really embodies that. It's not to say that the manga gets a lot worse after this movie or anything, but to me it gets a lot more convoluted, and once the first big arc wraps up, the plot just kind of loses me. Maybe that's just the cost of reading week to week. But as far as the movie goes, if you like the first season, I think you'll love the movie. Everything appealing about the show up to this point, the movie has. You've got kind of juvenile humor, you get rom-com, you get some shonen style action, a pretty tragic story overall, great animation, pretty good soundtrack all over the place, techno, heavy metal, sad piano music. It encapsulates the zany. I'm not sure where else you're going to find a story that has a guy with a chainsaw coming out of his face, riding a shark that moves around like a cockroach, fighting a typhoon. Let's just get into it. The premise of the movie overall is pretty straightforward. You're continuing from season 1. Obviously, Chainsaw Man's heart is very valuable in this world. He meets Reze, wants her to become his new waifu, torn between her and Makima. Reze is voiced by Reina Ueda. She's in a ton of shit. Demon Slayer, You Are Miss Servant. There's like 1,000 other ones if you look at her Wikipedia. Natsuki Hane or Tanjiro doing gangbusters at the box office this year between this and Demon Slayer. But anyway, Denji's kind of continuing his journey of personal growth. He meets Reze. The first third of the movie kind of feels like a rom-com. And then once the plot pivots to your Chainsaw Man fighting the bad devil story, it pivots hard and fast. Reze exposes herself as the bomb devil, and the rest of the movie is that until about the last 15 minutes, where you find out that she's the equivalent in this world of kind of a Soviet Union sleeper agent in our world who was brainwashed to go after Chainsaw Man. Then she actually did capture feelings for him, and Makima cleans up the mess, sort of solidifying her path that you'll see later in the manga. That's a very quick plot synopsis, but I want to get into why Reze is so popular, and I think what makes this arc in particular work within the Chainsaw Man story. Denji is obviously a very broken character as a person. Exploited his whole youth, never really had a childhood, was treated like garbage. Makima treats him like a dog. I don't know if you saw the memes or not, but apparently people were barking in the theater when she was on screen. And I love that Reze is kind of a parallel to that. One of the big things that she talks about with him is that he should really go to school. He's 16 years old. He should be able to have a normal kid life. And she kind of points out how messed up his situation is, fighting devils on behalf of the government. And you find out right at the end that the reality is she's the same. She even says, I've never been to school either, which is just a really tragic moment for her character, because you get lines from her throughout the movie where she's kind of talking tough, saying that she was always betraying him, trying to push him away. But then she says things like, I wish I had just tried to kill you right when I met you. So there is a pretty conflicted part of her that does care about Denji as Denji. And that makes her character feel like one of the most genuine as far as the women that he interacts with in this story, because she's one of the only ones that cares about Denji as Denji at all. Pretty much everyone else in this world only cares about Chainsaw Man, and that's where his value starts and stops. So all the gooners aside, I think that's why Reze has the most appeal as far as the women that he talks to or interacts with throughout the series. Obviously, that's not everyone, but I think a pretty big chunk of the fan base likes her the best because there is a sort of authenticity to her character. She does kind of screw up in the sense that she develops feelings for him, even though she's trying to exploit Chainsaw Man and obviously kill him. And I think this is a huge moment for Denji as well. I won't spoil anything in the manga. I'll just say the fact that he develops feelings for her and then has his heart broken plays a crucial role later in his story as the frustration wears on him that every person he interacts with has an ulterior motive. And Chainsaw Man isn't one of my favorite series, but I do think it does a really good job of getting these points across, even if they manifest on screen or page, I guess, as sort of simplistic juvenile humor. They often have a lot more significance for his character and for the broader story as a whole. You know, the idea that Denji, who's had to sell off a testicle and a kidney, and he's just grateful to be alive. Then he becomes grateful for getting a bed and 3 meals a day, and he wants more. And this is something reiterated throughout the movie. They talk about the city mouse versus the country mouse, and Denji does have ambitions, but they kind of always betray him, and the people around him either get hurt or fuck him over perpetually. I think it makes for a really interesting story to watch because it does have the kind of stupid humor, but it has the balls to go through with really terrible and tragic events. Obviously, if you've seen season 1, you know he loses some people important to him. This does not stop in the manga. I won't say more than that, but it is consistent in that regard. And I think this movie and Reze's arc really embodies all of that in a 90-minute movie. Like when you can get a third of a rom-com, a massive betrayal where she bites his fucking tongue off and then tries to kill him. And then he could kill her, but still wants to run away with her because he has feelings for her. And his self-esteem is so low that any woman that likes him, he likes. And he says as much in the movie. I think this show does a really great job of masking pretty serious things in a pretty humorous skin. So to see it all put in one arc is really impressive from a writing perspective. It's not dragged out. There's not wasted screen time. You're getting 90 minutes flat and a ton of things happen both story and character-wise to Denji. Reze goes through a whole personal journey. Aki has some nice little character moments as well, even with minimal screen time. The action in this movie is really cool. Obviously, when you have the Bomb Devil, she can use her powers in really neat ways. She uses them kind of like Bakugo almost in My Hero Academia. She's accelerating all over the place. She's just blowing shit up. She kind of acts like a terrorist at points, just throwing exploding body parts at people and like really causing mass destruction. And of course, this movie has the budget to animate that stuff to the fullest. And even though I thought it was pretty clear, Makima seems to be a fan favorite. I think by the end of the movie, it's pretty solidified, if it wasn't already for you, the path that her character is going to go down and kind of her role in the story. I don't want to say too much for the anime only crowd, but if you had doubts about what she's willing to do to Denji, I feel like this movie puts those to rest. And the last thing I'll say, and this is more of a meta thing, is that I've kind of shit on the MCU and DCU for crossing mediums, you know, going from streaming to movies to animated shows or whatever. I think anime is doing it as best as it can be done by saying, hey, you've seen the show, we need more of a budget, we're going to put this in theaters, please come see it. But it'll be out on streaming a few months later, and it seems like they're doing pretty well. Obviously, Demon Slayer is kicking ass at the theaters. I think it made like 700 million. Chainsaw Man, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more like 250. I haven't seen the exact box office numbers yet, but I think this formula does work in the sense that the bigger budget helps the animation, helps the production, and does allow anime to have a value of its own besides selling manga. That's a totally different subject. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I did want to mention it because I actually just shit on the cross medium thing like 2 months ago. Maybe anime is doing it in a fashion that can make it work, but I don't want to keep going. If you like Chainsaw Man season 1, I think you'll love the movie. I always try to do what I can to support the creators, support the shows. I think it's worth seeing in theater, but I'll leave it there for this one. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. If you've read the manga, feel free to chime in as well. I'll be honest, I got pretty much lost after the first big arc, and every week that I'm reading it, I'm just like, all right then. I try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.